What if I told you? Earth has nearly died not once, but 5 times. Entire oceans turned to graveyards, skies to poison, and forests to ash. This is the story of extinction and survival. Mass extinction. 2 words that sound almost unreal. Because when we look at life around us, forests growing back after fire, coral reefs rebuilding after storms, it feels eternal. Life always finds a way, right? But 5 times in Earth's deep history, that cycle almost broke. 5 times, the majority of species, sometimes over 90%, were erased. Not in slow decline, but in violent, catastrophic events. Imagine entire oceans suffocating in weeks. Forests withering into deserts. The very air turning toxic. These weren't just disasters, they were resets. Scientists call them the Big 5 extinctions. Each one changed everything. Each one destroyed the old world and gave birth to a new one. Without them, there would be no dinosaurs, no mammals, no humans. In fact, you wouldn't even be here to hear this story. But here's the paradox. Extinction is both destruction and creation. When dominant species fall, it clears space for others to rise. After reefs collapsed, forests spread. After giants perished, smaller survivors thrived. Every ending became a new beginning. In this series, we'll travel through time to witness all 5 great extinctions. From the frozen seas of the Ordovician to the poisoned oceans of the Devonian. From the firestorms of the Great Dying to the volcanic chaos of the Triassic. And finally, to the most famous of all, the asteroid that ended the dinosaurs. Each chapter is a warning and a reminder. Because today, many scientists believe we may be standing on the edge of a 6th extinction. But this one isn't caused by asteroids or volcanoes. It's caused by us. So buckle in. This is not just a story of death, it's the story of survival. Of how life, again and again, crawled back from the brink. And our journey begins 444 million years ago. In a world ruled by oceans where the first mass extinction would strike, turning paradise into silence. 444 million years ago, Earth was paradise for ocean life. Trilobites, coral reefs, and nautiloids ruled a thriving underwater kingdom. But then, the world froze, and 85% of marine life vanished. The Ordovician period was a world almost entirely underwater. Shallow seas covered much of the continents. Coral reefs grew into sprawling underwater cities, teeming with trilobites crawling across the seafloor and squid-like nautiloids jetting through the water like living torpedoes. Life had exploded in diversity. It seemed unstoppable. But nature has a way of reminding us that stability is an illusion. Out of nowhere, the planet plunged into an ice age. Massive glaciers spread across the southern supercontinent of Gondwana. As ice locked up water, sea levels dropped dramatically. Imagine coastlines retreating hundreds of kilometers. Shallow seas, the cradle of most marine life, simply disappeared. Coral reefs collapsed. Ecosystems that had taken millions of years to build crumbled in centuries. Trilobites, once rulers of the seafloor, died in staggering numbers. In total, more than 80% of all marine species vanished. But then, the pendulum swung the other way. The ice melted. Seas rushed back. Oxygen levels dropped. Climates shifted. And those species that had somehow survived the freeze now faced a flooded, unstable world. The survivors weren't the giants of their time, but the adaptable. Creatures that could endure both cold and chaos. This was the first great extinction in Earth's history. A brutal reminder that life's security is always temporary. The oceans had nearly dawned yet. In the aftermath, life endured. Hidden in deeper waters, fragile lineages persisted. And from them, the oceans would rise again. But paradise never lasts, because the next extinction wouldn't be caused by ice. It would be caused by something far more insidious: life itself. Plants were about to change the world in ways that nearly destroyed it. 375 million years ago, Earth was alive like never before. Oceans swarmed with armored monsters, forests spread for the very first time, and life seemed unstoppable. But then, the very plants that gave Earth new life poisoned the seas and triggered one of history's great extinctions. A golden age of oceans. The Devonian is often called the Age of Fishes. Imagine diving into warm, shallow seas. Below you swim placoderms, giant armored fish, some longer than a bus. Their jaws slammed shut with bone-crushing force, making them apex predators of their age. Sharks, too, had begun to appear, sleek hunters of open waters. Trilobites, those hardy survivors from earlier ages, scurried across coral reefs that stretched across entire continents. The seas seemed invincible diverse, colorful, overflowing with predators and prey. If any era could last forever, it should have been the Devonian. Forests take root, but the real revolution was happening on land. Until now, Earth's continents were barren, painted only with low mats of moss and tiny plants hugging the ground. Suddenly, trees appeared. Primitive forests spread. Towering plants like Archaeopteryx grew to 30 meters high, their roots digging deep into the soil. For the first time, shade cooled the ground. Soil stabilized. Insects buzzed between plants, and early arthropods scuttled across forest floors. It was a green transformation that would reshape the planet forever. But with transformation came unintended consequences. When life becomes poison, as roots dug into stone, they broke rock into soil and released nutrients phosphorus and nitrogen into rivers. Those nutrients flowed into the seas. At first, it seemed like a gift. More food for algae, more energy for the food chain. But nature went too far. Algae bloomed in massive, uncontrolled swarms. When the blooms died, bacteria decomposed them, draining oxygen from the water. Vast, dead zones spread across the oceans. Imagine standing on the edge of a Devonian shoreline, the water green and choking. Fish gasping at the surface, before floating belly up, reefs collapsing into lifeless rubble. Entire ecosystems suffocated. Coral reefs, which had flourished for hundreds of millions of years, collapsed almost completely. The armored placoderms that once ruled the seas dwindled into extinction. Trilobites, already weakened by earlier crises, suffered heavy losses again. Waves of death. This extinction didn't happen in a single blow. It struck in pulses. Waves of crisis stretched over millions of years. Each time, life recovered slightly only to be knocked down again. By the end, about 75% of all species were gone. What had once been an oceanic paradise became a graveyard. The first steps onto land, yet even as the oceans collapsed, new life found opportunity in disaster. In the murky shallows, some fish evolved stronger fins, capable of pushing through reeds and mud. They developed primitive lungs, allowing them to gulp air when oxygen in the water ran dangerously low. Picture a strange creature, half fish, half amphibian-like, Tiktaalik, with fins strong enough to crawl onto muddy banks and a neck that allowed it to lift its head above the water. Clumsy, fragile, awkward, but revolutionary. These pioneers were the first true vertebrates to step onto land. From them came amphibians. And from amphibians, eventually reptiles, mammals, and humans. In other words, without the Devonian disaster, you and I might never have existed. Tragedy and transformation. So the Devonian extinction was more than destruction. It was transformation. The oceans lost their giants. The reefs that had lasted for millions of years nearly disappeared. But on land, life had opened a door it would never close. From shallow swamps and gasping fish came the first chapter of terrestrial vertebrates, the ancestors of every creature that would one day walk, run, or fly on land, foreshadowing the next catastrophe. But even this disaster, which erased 3/4 of species, would pale compared to what lay ahead. Because just 120 million years later, Earth would face its darkest hour. A catastrophe so total that scientists call it the Great Dying, a time when life itself seemed to vanish, and the planet almost became a silent rock in space. 252 million years ago, Earth nearly stopped breathing. Forests withered, oceans turned to poison. Volcanoes unleashed fire for thousands of years, and more than 90% of all life was erased. This was the closest Earth has ever come to total death. A world before the fall, the late Permian world was thriving. Reptiles roamed dry landscapes, some small and nimble, others massive and lumbering. Strange creatures, like Dimetrodon, with a sail on its back, hunted across river plains. Amphibians, though fading, still lurked in swamps. Insects buzzed in huge numbers, and forests stretched across much of the land. In the oceans, trilobites clung to survival, while strange spiny fish and coral reefs filled the seas. It was a vibrant planet, but one living on borrowed time. The Earth cracks open. In Siberia, the ground split. For hundreds of thousands of years, volcanoes erupted in what we now call the Siberian Traps. Lava flooded across millions of square kilometers. It's enough to cover the United States in molten rock many times over. But the lava wasn't the deadliest part. It was the gases. Carbon dioxide and methane poured into the atmosphere. Temperatures spiked. The air thickened with poison. Sulfur dioxide created acid rain, stripping leaves from forests and bleaching the soil. Rivers ran black with toxins. A planet on fire. The greenhouse effects spiraled out of control. Temperatures soared higher than at any time in Earth's history. The oceans, once full of life, grew hot and stagnant. With no circulation, oxygen vanished from deep waters. Bacteria thrived, releasing hydrogen sulfide gas, poisonous clouds that rose from the oceans, killing anything they touched on land. Imagine walking across a Permian shoreline. The sea is purple with bacteria, reeking of sulfur. Fish float dead at the surface. Forests near the coast stand as blackened husks, burned by acid rain. The very air tastes of poison. The toll of the great dying species fell like dominoes. Trilobite survivors of every extinction before this finally disappeared forever. Coral reefs collapsed and would not return for millions of years. On land, massive reptiles and amphibians perished. Even insects, those eternal survivors, suffered catastrophic losses. By the end, 90 to 95% of marine species and 70% of land species were gone. It was the deadliest mass extinction in Earth's history. The great dying Earth on the edge of silence. For a time, the Earth seemed almost empty. Vast landscapes lay barren. Oceans were hushed, lifeless expanses. The sky glowed with volcanic haze. The ground cracked and blackened. It was as if the planet itself had turned hostile to life. And yet, even here, survivors endured. In burrows underground, small reptilian ancestors of dinosaurs hid. Tiny proto-mammals, fragile but resourceful, clung to existence. They survived by being small, by hiding, by needing little. The seeds of the future, the great dying, was not just destruction, it was transformation. The old world was gone, but the survivors carried the blueprint for what would come next. From these shadows would rise the dinosaurs. From these burrows would one day emerge the mammals. But the Earth was not finished testing life, because just 50 million years later, another extinction would strike. This time it would clear the stage, completely making way for the dinosaurs to seize their reign. The Earth had just survived the deadliest event in history. The Great Dying had erased nearly all life. And yet, from the ashes, a new world was reborn. But just as it stabilized, disaster struck again. This was the Triassic extinction, the catastrophe that cleared the stage for dinosaurs. Life after death 252 million years ago, the Earth was nearly silent. The Great Dying had wiped away almost everything. Oceans lay empty. Forests burned, and even insects had collapsed. But small survivors endured. Burrowing reptiles, proto-mammals, and fish clinging to isolated lakes and seas. Slowly, over millions of years, life clawed its way back. Plants regrew, insects returned, rivers filled again with fish. On land, reptiles diversified. Some became lumbering herbivores with barrel-shaped bodies. Others became swift predators with sharp teeth and agile limbs. These new lineages were fragile, but they carried the spark of recovery. The Triassic world was strange, an age of experimentation. Evolution, shaken by catastrophe, was throwing out new forms like dice across a table. Crocodile-like archosaurs prowled riverbanks. Giant amphibians the size of cars lurked in swamps. Small shrew-like proto-mammals scurried in the shadows, hiding from predators. And scattered among them were early dinosaurs, teeny two-legged creatures, no bigger than dogs. At first, they were nothing special, but they were waiting for their chance. The land of Pangaea during the Triassic. Earth's continents were fused into one massive supercontinent, Pangaea. Imagine standing on endless plains that stretched for thousands of miles, bordered by mountains higher than the Himalayas. The climate was harsh. Summers were scorching, winters bitterly cold. Rainfall was unpredictable, massive storms followed by long droughts. But such extremes forced resilience. Animals grew tough, adaptable, efficient. The Triassic was not gentle, but it forged survivors. The rise of the archosaurs among the most successful creatures of this time were the archosaurs ruling reptiles. This diverse group included ancestors of crocodiles, pterosaurs, and dinosaurs. They evolved powerful lungs, upright legs, and efficient metabolisms that gave them the edge in a punishing world. Some archosaurs became armored predators with crocodile-like jaws. Others were swift runners chasing prey across the dry plains. Still others took to the sky as the first pterosaurs, opening a new chapter in flight. But within this mix, one lineage stood out: small, fast, bipedal archosaurs, with hollow bones and long tails. The first true dinosaurs. They were not yet giants, but evolution was quietly sculpting the rulers of the future. A planet in upheaval, yet stability never lasts long in Earth's history. About 201 million years ago, the supercontinent of Pangaea began to split apart. The Atlantic Ocean was being born. As the land tore open, volcanoes erupted on a colossal scale. This was the Central Atlantic Magmatic Province eruptions, so vast they flooded entire regions with lava, releasing enormous amounts of carbon dioxide and sulfur into the atmosphere. The climate lurched into chaos. First came rapid warming. Forests withered under the heat. Oceans grew acidic. Species that had barely recovered from the Great Dying now faced suffocation and starvation. Then, as ash filled the sky, temperatures swung again, heat giving way to sudden cold, before snapping back to burning heat. The planet became unstable, swinging between extremes that few species could survive. The Triassic Extinction. This was the Triassic Extinction. Roughly 75% of all species vanished. Giant amphibians, once dominant, disappeared forever. Many reptile lineages collapsed, leaving only fragments behind. Insects suffered heavy losses again. The world's ecosystems buckled under the weight of volcanic chaos. But in destruction, opportunity always hides. Those that survived were the ones most adaptable to instability. And among them were the dinosaurs. The rise of dinosaurs, with their rivals gone, dinosaurs expanded into every niche. No longer just small, dog-sized hunters, they grew larger, stronger, and more diverse. Some became towering herbivores, stripping forests for food. Others became sharp-toothed predators, learning to hunt in packs. They were efficient. Their upright stance let them run faster and breathe better than sprawling reptiles. Their eggs were hardy, able to survive harsher conditions. Their bodies were adaptable, evolving rapidly to match new climates and prey. In just a few million years, dinosaurs went from background creatures to the rulers of the land. Their reign would last for the next 135 million years. The legacy of the Triassic. The Triassic extinction was a tragedy, wiping out 3/4 of all life. But it was also the turning point that reshaped the planet. Without it, amphibians might still rule rivers and crocodile-like reptiles might still dominate the land. Instead, the stage was cleared for dinosaurs to rise, for pterosaurs to master the skies, and for mammals to quietly survive in the shadows, waiting for their time. It was a reminder that in every collapse lies transformation. The Triassic ended in fire and chaos, but it gave birth to the most spectacular dynasty Earth has ever seen: the dinosaurs. The Triassic ended in fire. From its ashes rose the giants. Sauropods that shook the earth with every step. Raptors that hunted in packs. Pterosaurs that darkened the skies. The age of dinosaurs had begun. But even they were not eternal. Because 135 million years later, another rock from the heavens would fall and end their world forever. From the ashes of the Triassic rose titans. Creatures so vast, they shook the earth with every step. Predators with teeth like swords. Skies filled with wings wider than plains. This was Earth's masterpiece, the golden age of the dinosaurs. A rebuilt Earth after the Triassic extinction cleared the stage. The dinosaurs took over. The Jurassic period, beginning around 201 million years ago, opened with a burst of life. Forests regrew. Rivers carved valleys. Climates stabilized, warmer, wetter, more forgiving than the brutal Triassic. It was the perfect stage for giants to emerge, and giants came, the sauropods, living skyscrapers. Among the most inspiring were the sauropods. Imagine herds of Brachiosaurus or Diplodocus stretching across plains. Their necks rose higher than modern buildings, sweeping through treetops to strip away entire forests. Their tails cracked like thunder, capable of breaking bones with a single swing. These were the largest creatures ever to walk on land, living skyscrapers, weighing as much as 10 elephants. Their footsteps reshaped ecosystems. Where they walked, forests were opened, rivers redirected, landscapes transformed. The apex hunters of the Jurassic, but giants invite predators. Enter Allosaurus and its kin, apex hunters of the Jurassic. Sleek, muscular, balanced, with serrated teeth, built to carve flesh. They stalked in groups, testing herds for weakness. Imagine the terror of a young sauropod separated from its herds, surrounded by hunters, its cries echoing as teeth closed in. The Jurassic was a constant arms race. Herbivores evolving size and defense, predators evolving speed and power. It was nature's greatest theater of survival. The skies open above it all. The skies were no longer empty. Pterosaurs spread their leathery wings, some species reaching wingspans of 10 meters wider than small planes. They ruled cliffs and coasts, swooping down to snatch fish or scavenging carcasses left by land predators. Entire colonies nested on rocky ledges, the air alive with the beating of wings. And in their shadow, something new was stirring. Primitive birds, descended from small, feathered dinosaurs. Their wings were clumsy at first, their feathers more for insulation or display than true flight. But they carried the spark of a lineage that would one day outlast even the mightiest reptiles. The oceans fill with monsters beneath the waves. The seas became killing grounds of their own. Ichthyosaurs swam like reptilian dolphins, sleek and fast. Pliosaurs grew massive, with skulls longer than a human is tall, jaws strong enough to crush prey in seconds. Later, mosasaurs, or relatives of snakes and lizards, would rise to dominate the oceans, reaching lengths over 15 meters. Imagine diving into a Cretaceous sea. Shadows loom beneath you. A mosasaur erupts upward, jaws gaping wide, engulfing prey in a single strike. Even the mighty sharks of that age gave way to these oceanic leviathans, Cretaceous titans. As millions of years passed, dinosaurs reached their ultimate forms in the Cretaceous. The land was filled with horned giants like Triceratops, herds moving in endless migration. Ankylosaurs, armored from head to tail, carried clubs capable of breaking predator bones. Duck-billed hadrosaurs grazed in vast numbers, their calls echoing like trumpets across valleys. And then at the top stood Tyrannosaurus rex, over 12 meters long, weighing more than 7 tons. Its bite could crush bone like twigs. Its jaws delivered the strongest bite force of any land animal in history. This was not just a predator, it was the apex of 150 million years of evolution, the very embodiment of dominance. Balance in a violent world. The Cretaceous ecosystem was a masterpiece of balance. Herds of herbivores reshaped landscapes. Predators kept populations in check. Plants flourished, especially the new flowering plants that painted Earth in colors unseen before. Insects spread pollen, birds learned to fly with greater grace. The planet had never been so alive, so diverse, so spectacular. It seemed unshakable, foreshadow of doom. And yet, no rain lasts forever. Far across the solar system, a rock 6 miles wide was drifting silently through space. Its path was locked onto Earth. The dinosaurs had conquered land, sea, and sky. They had grown into the greatest creatures the world had ever seen, but their empire was fragile. All it would take was one moment, one strike, to turn their golden age into their final chapter. For over 150 million years, the dinosaurs ruled. But in a single day, it would all end. Fire would rain from the skies. Darkness would swallow the earth, and the giants would fall. For 150 million years, dinosaurs ruled every corner of the earth, and then, a single day, it was over. Fire fell from the sky, oceans boiled, darkness swallowed the planet. This was the end of the giants, the rock from space 66 million years ago. A mountain-sized asteroid 6 miles wide entered Earth's atmosphere. It was traveling faster than a bullet, faster than anything life could comprehend. In just seconds, it pierced the sky above what is now the peninsula in Mexico. When it struck near Chicxulub, the energy released equaled billions of nuclear bombs. The ground vaporized instantly. A crater more than 150 kilometers wide tore into the earth. Shockwaves circled the globe in minutes. The day the world burned, the impact threw mountains of rock and dust into the air. Friction in the atmosphere set forests aflame on the other side of the planet. Within hours, wildfires raged across continents. Creatures thousands of kilometers away were blinded by searing light, then suffocated by smoke. Tsunamis taller than skyscrapers rippled across oceans, slamming into coastlines, drowning entire ecosystems. In the first day, millions of lives were lost, not just to impact, but to fire, flood, and chaos. The long darkness, but the worst was still to come. Dust and sulfur filled the sky, blocking the sun for months, perhaps years. Days turned to twilight. Nights became absolute blackness. Photosynthesis stopped. Plants withered. Flowering forests collapsed. Herbivores starved. Without them, predators had nothing to hunt. The mighty Tyrannosaurus rex, the horned Triceratops, the armored Ankylosaurus all fell silent in the darkness. The earth freezes, temperatures plummeted. With the sun blocked, Earth entered a sudden deep freeze. Oceans cooled. Ice spread. For creatures that had thrived in warmth, it was a death sentence. At the same time, acid rain fell from the skies, poisoning rivers and lakes. Entire food chains unraveled. The end of an empire by the time the skies began to clear. 75% of all life was gone. The non-avian dinosaurs, those that had dominated land for 150 million years, were extinct. Pterosaurs vanished. Massive marine reptiles like mosasaurs disappeared. The age of giants had ended. Survivors, but not everything perished. Small, feathered dinosaurs, birds, survived. Their small size, ability to fly, and varied diet gave them an edge. Tiny mammals endured too, burrowing underground, feeding on roots, seeds, and insects. Crocodiles, turtles, and some amphibians managed to survive in water and mud. These small, often overlooked survivors carried life through the apocalypse. A world reborn. When the dust finally settled, Earth was forever changed. The reign of the dinosaurs was over. In their place, mammals began to rise, diversifying into niches once filled by giants. From these small survivors would come primates. And from primates. The asteroid didn't just end the dinosaurs, it cleared the path for human history. The lesson of extinction, the Cretaceous extinction, reminds us that no reign is eternal. The mightiest creatures the Earth had ever seen vanished almost overnight. Survival favored not the strongest, but the adaptable, the small, the hidden. The dinosaurs ruled for 150 million years, yet their empire ended in a single day. What does that say about us creatures who have ruled for less than 1 million? Because while the dinosaurs were undone by rock and fire, our threat may come from ourselves. 5 times, life nearly died. 5 times, Earth reset. But today, scientists warn, a 6th extinction may already be unfolding. And this time, the asteroid. Is this a different kind of threat? Unlike the great extinctions of the past caused by ice, volcanoes, poison seas, or cosmic impacts, the 6th extinction is not driven by nature alone. It is being written by a single species, humans. In just a few thousand years, we have transformed the planet more than any force since the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs. Forests vanish under the blade of deforestation. Rivers are dammed, diverted, and poisoned. Oceans, once boundless, now warm, acidify and fill with plastic. Species disappear daily, sometimes quietly, unnoticed, without even a name recorded. Amphibians vanish from wetlands. Birds fall silent in forests. Coral reefs bleach, turning from cities of color into white wastelands. Scientists estimate that extinction rates today are 100 to 1,000 times higher than natural background levels. The drivers of collapse, the causes, are many but all trace back to us. Habitat destruction. Jungles cut into farmland. Wetlands drained. Oceans trawled bare. Pollution. Toxins in rivers. Plastics in oceans. Chemicals in the air. Overhunting and overfishing. Species hunted faster than they can recover. Invasive species carried across the globe, disrupting fragile balances. Climate change. The most relentless driver, reshaping ecosystems faster than life can adapt. It's a perfect storm, and it is accelerating. The faces of loss think of the great beasts of our age. Elephants, rhinos, whales, giants that survived ice ages, predators, and the rise of humanity itself. Now they stand on the brink, hunted for ivory, harpoons, or left without land. But it's not only the great creatures. It's the small, the unseen, the humble. Insects, the pollinators of our crops, vanish in silence. Amphibians, sensitive to the slightest change in water, disappear faster than any other group. Entire ecosystems unravel when their smallest parts are removed. A future written in shadow if the sixth extinction continues unchecked. The face of Earth will change as drastically as it did when the asteroid fell. Forests may collapse. Oceans may lose their coral reefs entirely. Countless species will vanish not over millions of years, but within our lifetimes. And yet, there is a difference this time. The asteroid did not know what it was doing. Volcanoes did not choose to erupt. But we humans know. We can measure it, predict it, and perhaps prevent it. The seeds of hope. Across the world, efforts are being made. Protected areas expand. Species once nearly lost, like the California condor, the giant panda, or the humpback whaler, slowly recovering. New technologies aim to restore habitats, to pull carbon from the skies, to clean rivers and seas. The story is not finished. It is being written right now by the choices we make. It's the sixth extinction in us. The history of mass extinctions shows us one truth. The Earth always survives. Life always endures. But the question is never about Earth. It's about us. Will we be among the survivors? Will our civilization adapt? Or will it become just another layer of fossils, buried like the trilobites and the dinosaurs? Extinction is not the end. It is the beginning of something new. But this time, what comes next depends on us. Because for the first time in history, one species holds the power to cause or to prevent a mass extinction. And that species is us. 5 times, life nearly ended. 5 times, it was reborn. Every extinction was a tragedy, but also a turning point. And hidden inside them are lessons not just for nature, but for us. Lesson 1. Nothing lasts forever. Trilobites ruled the oceans for 270 million years longer than the time between the first dinosaurs and us. They seemed invincible, yet they vanished. Dinosaurs conquered every ecosystem, dominating Earth for over 150 million years. Yet a single day ended their reign. The lesson: power does not guarantee permanence. No matter how vast an empire, biological or human, it can fall in an instant. Lesson 2. Change is the only constant. Each extinction reshaped the world. The Ordovician froze oceans. The Devonian forests poisoned seas. The Permian firestorms remade the planet. Triassic volcanism opened the door for dinosaurs. The asteroid ended them and gave mammals a chance. The Earth will always change, sometimes slowly, sometimes violently. The question is never whether change will come. It's how life responds when it does. Lesson 3. Survival favors the small and adaptable in every extinction. It was not the giants who survived. It was the small, the overlooked, the adaptable. Trilobites died, but tiny mollusks endured. Giant reptiles perished, but true-sized mammals held on. Even in the age of dinosaurs, it was birds, their smallest relatives, that outlasted them. The lesson? Survival is not about being the biggest or strongest. It's about being flexible, resourceful, able to adapt when the world shifts beneath your feet. Lesson 4. From death comes renewal. Each collapse cleared the way for something new. Without the Ordovician extinction, corals might never have diversified. Without the Devonian, amphibians may never have left the seas. Without the Great Dying, dinosaurs might never have risen. Without the asteroid, mammals and humans might never have had a chance. Extinction is cruel, but it is also the engine of transformation. Every ending is also a beginning. Lesson 5. The sixth is different. Here is where the pattern breaks. The first five were driven by forces beyond control: ice, fire, poison, space. But the sixth thief that comes fully is driven by us. And unlike trilobites or dinosaurs, we can see it happening. We can measure carbon rising, forests falling, species vanishing. For the first time, life faces an extinction event that could be prevented or at least slowed by the choices of a single species. That makes us both the danger and the solution. The final reflection. Extinction teaches us humility. It shows us that nothing, no dynasty, no species, no empire lasts forever. But it also teaches us resilience. Life always finds a way back. Question is, will we be part of that story, or just another chapter buried in stone? Extinction sounds final, but history shows us it never truly is. Every time life has fallen, it has risen again. Every ending has carried within it the seed of a beginning. A planet that always rebuilds. The Ordovician freeze stripped oceans bare. Yet in its aftermath, new reefs flourished. The Devonian collapse suffocated seas, yet it pushed life onto land. The Great Dying nearly silenced Earth, yet it birthed the age of dinosaurs. The Triassic eruptions cleared rivals, yet they gave dinosaurs their empire. The asteroid ended the dinosaurs, yet from its ashes rose mammals and eventually us. Extinction has never been the end of life. It has been the reset button, the brutal hand of nature, clearing the stage for something new. The survivors define the future. History reminds us. It is the survivors, not the rulers, who shape what comes next. Not the armored placoderms, but the fish that learned to breathe air. Not the towering dinosaurs, but the small mammals hiding in burrows. Not the giants of the past, but the humble, the adaptable, the unseen. And so, if a sixth extinction unfolds, the future may not belong to us. It may belong to something small, hidden, waiting for its moment just as mammals once waited under the shadow of the dinosaurs. A choice unlike any before. But there is one difference. The trilobites could not stop the seas from freezing. The dinosaurs could not deflect an asteroid. The forests of the Devonian could not control the chemistry of the ocean. But we humans can measure carbon in the air. We can track ice melting, forests vanishing, species declining. We can choose to act or to remain still. For the first time in the history of life, a species holds in its hands the ability to cause or to prevent mass extinction. That species is us. The final message: extinction is not the end. It is transformation. It is rebirth. It is the story of resilience, written again and again in the stone layers of Earth. But for the first time, we are not just characters in that story, we are its authors. The pen is in our hands, and the question is simple. What story will we choose to write? Music swells. Cinematic outro visuals, fossils dissolving into living animals, gives dinosaurs into birds, gives small mammals into humans, gives humans looking at the stars. Because if history has taught us anything, it is this: life will endure. The only question is whether we will be part of it.